ISTR, is this working? Shit, I took another okay, new sentence, enable punctuation. Okay, how do you? Okay, hopefully this works now. I took another step, but it's worth it if this thing makes sense. Excuse the formatting, I'm using voice to text on my phone. I can't write because when I look down, I lose concentration and then I start walking again. I can hold it off if I keep looking at the sea and I don't notice anything else. It makes it easier somehow. I need to tell someone before it's too late. I'm posting this everywhere I can in the hopes someone I know will find it and send it to my wife, or if it gets shared, maybe she'll see it? I would send it to her myself, but she kicked me out last night and she's blocked me on everything. Even if she doesn't, someone should know what happened. My wife is beautiful. I remember that. She's coming up on 63, but I remember how on her 60th, she was worried that she was starting to look old. The wrinkles at the sides of her eyes, the ever so slight sagging of the skin around her jaw, the delicate, almost translucent skin of her décolletage. She rubbed her chest and said it crumpled up like tissue paper. I kissed her shoulder and told her it was because she was so dainty, I'd need to take even better care of her. She called me an old fool. I told her less of the old, but I'm a fool for you, darling, and I saw her eyes light up with that sparkle she has. Hazel eyes, they haven't aged a day. She takes care of herself, my wife. Fake tan, never sunbed, never orange, but golden skin like she spends all day in the sun. She goes to the hairdressers the second the slightest hint of roots appear in her honey blonde hair. She dresses elegantly, she goes to the spa once a month and gets those face treatment things. But even without all that, she was always beautiful to me. That's why when Thea appeared, I didn't know what came over me. It was at a corporate dinner a few days ago. After a deal is finalized, I often throw them for my clients and employees, a thank you for the hard work and a bit of greasing the wheels for the next project. We decided to do this one on a yacht, dinner, drinks and a little boat tour around the bay, and then back to the pier for a swing band, dancing and more drinks. My wife loves sailing, she thought it would be fun. It was late in the evening when we met. The party had spilled off the pier and onto the beach itself, torches lighting up the sand, the band was playing somewhere. My wife and I were talking to Alec Sideris, one of my best friends, and his wife Georgette. Alec was pitching a new project to me, a housing development in a nearby area. I told him to come in the next morning to discuss it, and as I did I turned my head for a moment, and there she was. She was standing only a few feet away looking at me. Our eyes caught each other through the crowd and I was helpless. I stepped away in the middle of our conversation, cutting Alec off mid-flow just to see her properly. Big, dark eyes, in the most beautiful face I've ever seen. Shit. I lost concentration there. I stepped into the surf. My shoes are getting ruined. Water is seeping in the tops, it's so cold. I can feel the water swirling around my ankles as the tide goes in, out, out. I have to focus, or I won't finish this in time. I asked her for her name. "Call me Thea," she replied. Her voice was deep for a woman, but melodic and somehow soothing. She tilted her head to one side, almost bird-like, as she weighed me up with those dark eyes. Bird-like was a good description actually. She was small and gamine, with pale skin and dark hair. Long and loose, it fluttered in the breeze. "Andrew?" I felt a hand on my arm. My wife had stepped up behind me, Alec and Georgette trailing in her wake. "Aren't you going to introduce us to your friend?" I tore my eyes away from Thea. It seemed to take a physical effort to look away. My wife was looking up at me, a little concerned, a little hurt even. I smiled at her and hugged her to me. "Sorry, darling. This is Thea." My wife held out a hand, which Thea looked at but didn't take. A small smile curled the side of her mouth as she turned away with a polite "Excuse me. I'm on next. I'll see you later, Andrew." She glided to the bandstand and mounted the stage. The singer, a portly man with a fairly tragic 50s quiff, frowned for a moment but made no move to stop her as she stepped up to the microphone, and then she began to sing. "I wish I could explain it to you. I wish you could hear it. No, I don't. That would be cruel. But there's just no way to describe that voice. Listening to it, I felt like I was soaring. I was on fire, and at the same time I felt so safe. So comforted. It felt like I was a small child with a scraped knee, hearing my mother sing a lullaby. It felt like I was 21 and throwing myself around in the crowd at a Metallica concert. It felt like the best sex I'd ever had. And it was so much more than that. It was transcendent. Oh God. I need to stop. The water's up to my knees, I don't even remember moving forward. Just thinking of the song, fuck, it's up to my thighs now. My trousers are soaked, the tide is pulling on my legs. Oh please, if I could just turn around. Okay, the party. The party. Not the song, the party. After Thea stepped down from the stage, I lost sight of her in the crowd. My wife was still standing next to me and the long day was starting to show. Little wisps of hair were coming out of her updo. She looked haggard, to be honest. Bags were starting to show under her eyes. She tugged my arm again, saying she wanted to go. I nodded and we started to walk away. She was nattering about the party, about Georgette's new something or other charity that she wanted my wife to be a part of, but I couldn't focus. I looked at the tiny strands of gray starting to show at the very top of her head and I couldn't help comparing it to Thea's long dark hair, wavy and thick, almost seeming to be made up of a rainbow of colors, like the sheen on a starling's wing. I wondered what it would be like to touch it. Thea looked to be in her 20s, half the age of my wife, I chided myself. She was young enough to be my daughter. I was a disgusting old man. I tried to concentrate on my wife's chit-chat and we went to bed. She cuddled into me, snoring lightly as she sank into sleep. I stared at the ceiling and tried not to picture Thea's face. I got to work the next morning in plenty of time for my meeting with Alec, but instead of reading the presentation he'd sent I found myself staring off into space. I was doodling idly when he walked in, trying to remember the words of Thea's song. Andrew. Alec waved a hand in front of my face. Earth to Andrew. Sorry, I replied, mentally shaking myself off and trying to get my mind back on business. No worries, I can see you're excited by the prospectus by the way you've drawn all over it. What's that supposed to be? I looked down at my hand, which had been on autopilot. A picture had emerged under my hand. A bird, perched on a rock. With a human face. I'm sure I don't need to tell you whose. Weird picture, mate, commented Alec. Yeah, well, I'm in the housing business, not the art one, I replied, pushing the picture away, but Alec picked it up and examined it more closely. Looks a bit like that girl from last night, he said. The singer. What was her name? Not very good, was she? Thea. I answered. I thought she was great. Bit croaky if you ask me. But whatever floats your boat, one man's trash and all that. Put your Mrs. Nose right out of joint though the way you were staring at her. How do you know her? His flippant tone was starting to really irritate me. Odd as it sounds, I didn't like to hear him talk about Thea like that. Are you doing this pitch or what? I snapped. Just a little. Alec was still holding the picture. He considered it one more time before putting it down. Funny idea, the bird with a girl's face on it. Reminds me of something. He shrugged, then got down to selling me his latest scheme idea. It was a good one. I finished work early and I wandered down to the pier. The bandstand was still up, though most of the traces of the party were long gone. There were a few burned out torches still planted in the sand, leaning haphazardly this way and that. I stood there for a long time, just watching the ocean. It was cold, but it didn't bother me the way it normally would. I just stayed there, watching the waves. After a while it seemed that your eyes played tricks on you. I had been thinking about her all day. It should be no surprise that I thought I saw her out there. She seemed to be sitting on a rock, out past the pier in the middle of the bay. She was only an indistinct blur, just a shape on the waves, but all the same I felt a thrill down deep inside of me. I was sure that even though I couldn't see her face, she was looking at me. I felt the draw of her eyes. The wind was picking up, but in between the gusts I thought I heard snatches of music, a melodic voice singing to me, calling to me from the bay. Fuck. I nearly lost my phone. I think it's okay, but the water's up to my waist and I can't really feel my legs anymore. It's too cold. It's funny, I know I should want to go back to shore, but it's an empty feeling. It's too distant to really concentrate on. The song is way more important. I'm trying my best, but I don't know how much longer I can hold out. I need to finish this and send it out so someone knows, but that's the best I can do. I'm scared. I want to go back. I'm nearly finished. That first time, I only made it onto the sand. I started walking, but I tripped over one of the torches that had fallen onto the ground and that shook me out of it. I ran home. My wife was there, waiting for me. Dinner was cold. She was mad. I understood why, but I didn't really feel it. I just brushed by her and went to have a bath. I lay back in the water, thinking about the song I'd almost heard. She started banging on the door after a couple of hours. I told her not to bother me. She is beautiful, my wife. Honey blonde hair like a summer day, long dark hair that stirs in the breeze. Big dark eyes that fill up my vision. She has hazel eyes, my wife. Clear greeny brown. Green like the depths of the ocean in a storm. Sorry. Concentrating. Not much more to tell. I got out of the bath when Alec phoned to talk about the deal. My wife was angry again that I'd pay attention to work but not to her. I ignored her and listened to Alec. He seemed more real to me somehow than she did, chattering on in the background like a magpie scolding. Alec went through some of the detail of his plan and we agreed to approach the landowners in the morning. We were about to sign off and he mentioned my drawing. He'd asked his mother about it. She'd reminded him of the stories she used to tell him as a child. Old Greek stories from their heritage. The creatures, half bird, half woman, who would sit on the rocks and sing to passing ships, luring sailors to their doom with their hypnotic voices. Their names, Pisano, Ligeia, and Theoshapia. Theoshapia, whose name meant pleasing to the eye. Thea. My Thea. I said that last bit out loud. My wife was furious. I begged her, I said, listen to me, Thea, I love you. She didn't like that. I tried to correct myself but I couldn't. I can't remember her name. My wife is beautiful to me, but every time I try and think of her name all that comes into my head is big dark eyes filling my vision, a pale, bird-like face, hair like a starling's wing. She threw me out and I came straight here. I've been here all night. I walked down to the waterline, then stopped and turned around, but I couldn't leave. I've been struggling all night, back and forth, back and forth. This last time, I tried to turn away as soon I took the first step, but I couldn't. She's out there now, I can see her. It's not true about the rocks, she's standing on the waves in front of me. Her voice reached me on the beach and it's getting stronger. I couldn't turn away, I can't turn away, but I want her to know, my wife, I love her and her alone, honey hair and tan skin, like the sand on the beach behind me. I'm sorry this happened and I don't want to keep going, but I don't want to turn around. Maybe if I just hear the song one more time I'll be able to walk away. Maybe if I strain a little further too. No, that's the trap. I can't stop, but I can finish. It's up to my chest now, it's getting hard to stand. I need to send this before I try to swim. It's so cold. Like her pale skin. I don't want to die. Don't follow me. If you see her, walk away. Don't dwell on it. Drown it out. Hold your loved ones tight. Tell my wife I love her. My name is Andrew. Something. I was a property developer in a town on a bay. I have a wife with long dark hair and big dark eyes. If you know me, tell Thea I love her.